Hi, this is Dr. Navina Suresh. I'm a mental health professional based in Chennai and welcome to a new episode of Talk Therapy. Today I wanted to talk about a behavior which is sadly quite prevalent yet often overlooked and not addressed. I wanted to talk about bullying. I had recently read a very distressing news about a 10th grader, male student in Faridabad, a 16-year-old who died by suicide. And in his suicide letter, he had mentioned that his school, especially the higher authorities, as being the cause for his death. So incidentally, his mother was a teacher in the same school, and on further enquiry, it was found that the student had been suffering from dyslexia, depression. He had been bullied by some of his peers over his sexuality, and the mother had also brought up this issue with the concerned authorities. However, it had not been addressed. There was also a student in Tamil Nadu in 2019 November, a student of IIT Madras, who died by suicide. And in her letter, she had alleged or she had mentioned that a professor of the same institution had harassed her, and as that being responsible for her suicide. In Jan 2022, a school student in Tanjavur died by suicide. And in her suicide letter, she had blamed the school and their ill treatment and harassment of her as being the reason for her death. So it is coming out that increasing number of young children even and students are dying by suicide, and they give various reasons. As the statistics show, there are a number of factors which play a role that lead to this devastating consequence. However, we still do not have adequate research or data on how many of these suicides are related to or directly a consequence of a highly destructive behavioral pattern that we commonly refer to as bullying. Bullying in a different form was previously called ragging, which was very commonly occurring in a lot of colleges, especially professional institutions. It was very seriously considered, and it has to be appreciated that a lot of colleges and universities instituted very strict anti-ragging policies that eventually led to the control and fall in rates of ragging behaviors in colleges. Unfortunately, bullying, while not being as severe as ragging, does also exist, and it is a common misperception or a myth that it happens mostly amongst younger kids, amongst kindergartners or maybe primary school children. Bullying can even happen among older children, young adolescents, and even adults. So if you have children, you do need to be watching this episode. If you are an office goer, you need to be watching this episode. If you are running an organization where a team of people come together to work, you have to be watching this episode, because it's high time we step up our awareness about bullying and its detrimental effects and also its devastating consequences for both the individual and the organization. Now, what is bullying? Has it been defined? Yes, it is an act of repeatedly and deliberately harming or humiliating others. Note, repeatedly and deliberately. And the others, the victims involved, are usually smaller, weaker, they are more vulnerable or younger. And the way we distinguish this from the garden variety of aggression, the more common aggression that we see in day-to-day life, is that there is always a power imbalance involved in the situation. It does mostly happen in schools and playgrounds, but it can also occur in offices and anywhere where a bunch of people come together and work together, and there is a hierarchy involved and there are a lot of power equations involved, and it happens over a longer period of time. In children, bullying peaks between 11 to 13 years of age and generally decreases as children get older. So what are the different types of bullying? What is bullying and what are the different types of bullying? Bullying is harming or humiliating or hurting other people repeatedly, deliberately, intentionally or purposefully. This can be physical, this can be relational, this can be verbal, it can be sexual, it can be prejudicial, and of course now with the advent of digital media we do have cyberbullying, which cannot be overlooked. So physical bullying usually occurs amidst younger children and it entails pushing, shoving, kicking or hitting each other, and it's very obvious, therefore perhaps easier to address. Relational bullying is often resorted to by older people and also by girls. This involves manipulation, sabotage. More subtle signs of bullying are seen to happen, spreading rumors about the person, social exclusion, and spoiling the relationships of that person, sabotaging the work of that person, etc. Verbal bullying is more of name calling and making fun, or perhaps intimidating or threatening the person, and sexual bullying is that of a sexual nature, may involve sexual comments, sexual gestures, etc. Prejudicial bullying is usually based on a prejudice, ingrained belief or behavior that the bully perpetrates. It may be based on race or sexual orientation or gender or any other social parameter. In the US alone, we have statistics of 20% of students being bullied at school. So in a country like India with a much higher population, we can only imagine the numbers. A news report says that in the US, as much as 1,60,000 students stay home every day because they are afraid of facing bullying. And amongst the suicides that happened in Britain, amongst youngsters and children, they say that at least half of the suicides are related to instances of bullying. And boys and girls are both equally bullied, so there is no major disparity on the basis of gender. So what kind of person turns out to be a bully? Is a bully born or is a bully made? Bullies, as science shows, are more often made. This happens because aggression in early life is not consistently managed, and then the child develops a lack of internal restraints. They learn that they can get the desired results or whatever it is that they want by indulging in aggression or violence, and this goes on to become a durable behavior style. While there is no single kind of bully, bullies may have different types of personalities, different styles of actions and different motivations. There is a distinct psychological makeup. Most of these bullies evidence certain common psychological features. These include a lack of pro-social behavior, and these bullies often tend to be untroubled by anxiety. If you see a child with who tends to be anxious or an adult who is riddled with anxiety, they are less likely to bully others. These people, these bullies, have less empathy, do not understand others' feelings. Importantly, many of them tend to have something called paranoia. That is, they tend to misread the intentions of others even in neutral situations and believe that others are being hostile towards them, and they also have lesser awareness about themselves. They think that others think about them very positively, or they think that even when others don't like them, they tend to have a very positive self-regard about themselves. Chronic bullies tend to have strained relationships with peers, parents, and they also tend to have difficulties in their job performance. And then there are other types of bullies, for example, victims of bullying who become bullies themselves. Lot of times bullying is involved with it's associated with a loss of power, a sense of helplessness and a loss of control. And when these victims become bullies themselves, they believe or they experience a regain of that sense of power and control. Then you do have popular bullies. These are the ones who usually happen to have a group of followers, and they have a big ego. They are confident and assertive and outgoing. People usually tolerate these kind of bullies because it's easier to be accepted by them than to be bullied by them. And then you have group bullies, people who resort to bullying behaviors only when they are in a group, or children who engage in bullying only when they are in a group and justify it, saying that they are doing it because others are doing it. What are the victim profiles? Now this is very sad because many a times these victims are people who already have fearful attitudes. It may be that they have been traumatized in the past and develop fearful attitudes, or it may be something to do with their personality, and they lack assertiveness, they lack confidence, they tend to not stand up for themselves. And bullies actually engage in something called victim shopping, where after 7 years or 8 years of age, they are able to pick out the kind of victims they know will be amenable to this kind of bullying. These victims are easily upset. People who have less friends or allies, they may have some kind of disability, or they may be belonging to a minority. There may be a difference in the sexual orientation. They may be an LGBTQ person, or they may be people who easily show insecurity or apprehensiveness. So bullies pick on these kinds of people, and it actually becomes a rewarding cycle, a vicious cycle of reward for them when they see these people show fear and distress, when they show visible pain and suffering and easily give in to the bullies. It helps the bullies assert their dominance, and this becomes a cycle for them because this is their reward. So why do victims not come forward when they are being bullied? There are a plethora of factors. Sometimes it may be as simple as having lack of awareness. Many a times we are not able to put our finger on it, even though we know something wrong is going on. In more subtle kinds of bullying, such as relational bullying, because the signs are very subtle, we may not be able to pick up on it and define it as to what is happening. At other times, there is the fear of not being believed. There is the fear of shame, of embarrassment, of what the parents' response may be. Importantly, there is a fear of retaliation from the bullies. And at other times, there is simply a lack of awareness about the proper channel of reporting. So there are a number of reasons why victims don't speak up, victims of bullying. Parents should be extra aware and have their radars up and have an eye out for any signs that a child might be bullying somebody else or might be being bullied. So what are the signs that a child is being bullied? If your kid is being bullied, he or she may reveal any of the following signs. They might be having difficulties eating or sleeping. There might be either binge eating or lack of eating. There might be difficulty going to sleep, staying asleep, or nightmares. The child may show reluctance going to school and want to avoid social situations. There may be a drop in performance, drop in grades, school absenteeism, and they might develop manifest physical symptoms of stress, such as headache or fatigue or stomach ache, or they may even fake illness or being sick. And they may also evidence feelings of helplessness, decreased social esteem, self-esteem and self-destructive behavior. Also watch out for any bruises or injuries that are unexplained, and unexplained loss of personal belongings, jewelry, etc. Now what if your child is a bully? This too needs to be looked out for and has to be addressed in the early stages, so they do not grow up with this perpetual behavioral style that is going to be very harmful for them as well in future. Are they getting into frequent physical and verbal fights or assaults? And do they have friends who have a behavior of bullying others? Do they frequently get into detention or get called to the principal's office? Do they have any unexplained sources of new money, or do they have any new belongings? Do they show temperamental or personality traits such as blaming others, not taking responsibility for their own actions, giving a lot of importance to popularity and reputation, and being very competitive? Then they are the kinds of children or young adults who may be prone to bullying behaviors. Bullying is detrimental to both the victim and the bully. Many of time, the bullies themselves show a downward spiral over a long period of time, often not holding down jobs and having troubled relationships. They tend to be people who grow up to be antisocial, who tend to batter their wives, who do bully their children as well, and produce further generations of bullies. So it's imperative that we treat it early enough and it's addressed. Now, how can it be treated and addressed? If we are running organizations or if we are having schools, it's very important that we have anti-bullying programs and prevention programs in place. It can be done. We first need to define what is bullying. We have to have a policy defining bullying and a policy defining or denoting what is the kind of respect that we should be giving each other. People need to develop social skills. We need to develop confidence and assertiveness so that we are able to handle these kind of behaviors when we encounter them in others. It's best not to engage with the bully and to walk away. If not, another strategy could be to activate bystanders. Bystanders' attention will usually discourage bullies from pursuing with their usual course of action. Other than that, parents should look out for inquire about social challenges and role play possible solutions with their children. In organizations with adults, there can be frequent meetings, there can be activities which help to foster communication and collaborative action. People can identify root causes. For example, in some places, favoritism has been found to be a reason for bullying. So, if there is any cause for such behaviors going on, that has to be addressed and weeded out. And we need to teach employees to understand each other. We need to engage them in activities and rate them, ask them to rate these activities so they can see how it compares against others. For example, one person who kicks a door may rate it on a violence score of 5 out of 10, whereas to another person it may be perceived as 8 out of 10. So, such activities help to people understand how others perceive their actions. And of course, we do need to foster improved communication.